Okay, so we are going to move on to the new business, and the first item is the presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding a recommendation to the Parks and Recreation Department Director to approve the Central Williamson Creed Greenway Vision Plan. And we have Claire Edelman-Heath, I believe, and her team.
Chair Lewis, give us 2 seconds. We got a big group of people we got to move over.
Okay, go for it.
Can we check that Mary is on? She was having trouble connecting to WebEx, but she tried calling in and she was on Citizens Communications before. Mary, are you able to connect still?
I'm still here.
Okay, awesome.
Audio, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, I think we've got everybody at least to get started. We may have to bring some people over when it's the question time at the end of the presentation.
Great, thank you. And just if you could please introduce yourself when you speak, that would be great.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, board members. I'm Greg Montes with Park Planning and a member of the City Working Group for the Central Williamson Creed Greenway Vision Plan. We're excited to bring this community-led vision plan before the Parks and Recreation Board, as it highlights a collaborative partnership between the community, Nature Conservancy, Community Power Workshop, Sakura Robinson, and the City of Austin. It's worth mentioning that the plan supports several park long-range plan strategies, such as ensuring parks act as a relief from urban life, expanding and improving park access for all, and aligning programs with community interests. The plan also supports one of our city's 6 priority strategic outcomes, the health and environment, which states that every Austinite should enjoy a sustainable environment and a healthy life physically and mentally. And lastly, the plan aligns with 3 council-approved South Austin neighborhood plans, all which acknowledge Williamson Creek as a priority area for trails and enhancing access to the Greenbelt. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Katie Coyne with Sakura Robinson to say a few words.
Thanks, Greg. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for taking time to hear from us today. It's nice to see a couple of familiar faces. My name is Katie Coyne. I lead an award-winning practice at Asakura Robinson called the Urban Ecology Studio. We're known for doing equity-driven planning and design work. I've served as principal in charge on behalf of Asakura Robinson on this project and have overseen the development of this plan with my colleagues from start to finish. I really couldn't be more proud of my staff's work and the work of Community Powered Workshop and the work of countless community members and technical advisors. Each and every person involved has gone above and beyond to honor the possibility in this place. This is not your average parks plan. Building on years of community conversations, this plan integrates ecological thinking alongside rigorous community engagement in a way that is unparalleled in Austin and really in any work that I've been a part of to date. So I just wanted to open with that, and I'll hand it off to Siobhan to tell you a little bit more.
Thanks, Katie. Good evening, everyone. My name is Siobhan Otero. I'm the community coordinator at Community Powered Workshop. Thank you for your service on the Parks and Recreation Board. Community Powered Workshop is an Austin-based nonprofit organization that works alongside communities to create powerful and equitable places through collaborative planning. And over the last year, Community Powered Workshop has facilitated the convening of the community and city working groups with a goal to build long-term collaborative working relationships. And through this process, we engaged around 2,300 people, printed 4,300 materials in English and Spanish, distributed 3,000 door hangers, met with several neighborhood groups, and worked with partners to include the voices of the unhoused living along the creek in the engagement process. Engagement included storytelling activities, 5 virtual events, 6 virtual creek chats, and 3 socially distanced meetups. And now I'll pass it off to Mary Olmsted, who was a member of the community working group, to share a little bit more about the process of creating the vision plan.
All right. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not on video, and I do have some prompts for slides. So the intro slides should be put up right now. So good evening. My name is Mary Olmsted. I'm a member of the Central Williamson Creek Working Group. And the vision plan that we created is a culmination of several years of work by residents and volunteer groups. The project encompasses 58 acres of parkland along Williamson Creek and 16 acres of floodplain buyout work by residents and volunteer groups. 16 acres of floodplain buyout properties along the creek and tributaries from Manchac Road to South Congress. The next slide, please. For more than 20 years, residents have discussed and imagined ways to preserve and protect this corridor and make it more connected and accessible. In 2019, community leaders in the Southwood neighborhood partnered with several volunteer groups and nonprofits, including Community Powered Workshop, Public Green and Wild, the Nature Conservancy, and the National Park Service to engage neighbors along the creek to learn about their vision for the buyout properties. Next slide, please. In 2020, a grant was awarded by the St. David's Foundation and the Nature Conservancy for the purpose of creating a vision plan for the Greenway. A community working group of 8 residents and a city working group of department representatives were created to guide the planning and engagement process. The group selected Asakura Robinson as the landscape architect for the project. Next slide, please. Throughout the planning process, community members and city staff, mainly from watershed protection and Parks and Rec, were placed on equal footing as a way to balance community priorities with the lowest possible impact to the surrounding environment. And the next slide, please. The plan was shaped by input from 131 comments from neighbors on an interactive map, 2,200 votes that prioritized ideas, and 700 comments on various iterations of the vision plan. The end result was a community-led process with support from the City of Austin and local nonprofits. Thank you.
Would you advance to the next slide, please? Thank you. Hello, I'm Claire Edelman-Heath. I am a landscape architect and have been the project manager with Asakura Robinson, and I wanted to thank you so much for your time this evening. Here we have what Mary just described. This is a representation of how that engagement integrated into the design process over the last year. Beginning last June, we began an in-depth site analysis and worked with the city, community working group, and other stakeholders, and also had an extensive mapping exercise. Moving on from this early phase, we developed the 4 design goals that I'll speak about shortly, but these became the guiding principles for the vision. We also developed Creek idea cards from all of the engagement we had heard so far. These were ideas that helped us really fine-tune the vision of the ultimate design. And after we got consensus on those cards, we began to apply them to physical locations based on community input and city input to the vision plan itself. And since then, we have been refining it based on feedback and had many versions as well as written content until we had the version that we're presenting to you today. If you'll advance to the next slide, please. Thank you. A quick view of the extent of the Greenway as described. So it begins on the east side of Menchaca Road and continues. The stream flows west to east, so it flows east to South Congress. And it's a series of PARD properties and watershed protection floodplain buyouts. Next slide, please. When I spoke to the 4 goals earlier, these are the goals developed by the community. So goal 1 is a restored and biodiverse greenway. 2 is a community-centered greenway. 3, an accessible and visible greenway, and 4, an active and connected greenway. Next slide, please. The creek ideas were concepts for the greenway, and each one is meant to support one of the vision statements. What you see on screen are the most preferred vision creek ideas that we heard from public input. While there isn't an equal distribution of these ideas, we did find that many of them have overlap. For example, nature play also serves as an activity goal. So in that way, we found that there was a real balance and representation of all goals that the community wanted to see within the greenway. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now we come to an overall view of the vision plan. It's a series of amenities and environmental improvements linked by trails. We have a mulch nature trail represented by the white line, a single track mountain bike trail, and a high water route represented by an orange line. The purpose of the high water route is to provide connectivity despite storm events within the greenway. There are also a series of trailheads and amenities with distribution throughout the greenway, so wildflower planting, invasive species removal, as well as community ideas such as a labyrinth or music grove, and opportunities for environmental education, and wayfinding signage, and opportunities for fitness. Next slide, please. We broke these, we divided the vision plan into 3 tiers for implementation. Tier 1 are community-led collaborations with City of Austin landowners with their approval. Tier 2 are projects that would be led by the City of Austin but might have volunteer input and would be $50,000 or less. Tier 3 are longer-term goals, such as large-scale stormwater infrastructure that would total greater than $50,000 and would require community engagement. As you can see, the majority of the ideas fall under the Tier 1, so we tried to prioritize community involvement within the vision of the Greenway. Next slide, please. Thanks to the low impact nature of the ideas and volunteer-led initiatives, we find that this will be a very affordable greenway and a very affordable vision of with the total cost being about $2 million, with potential for reduction with partnerships like from local community resources such as Keep Austin Beautiful and the Austin Parks Foundation. Next slide, please. Finally, a word on sustainability. We designed the Greenway to meet one of the highest green building certification sustainable sites framework. As it's designed and presented, it would meet the criteria for pre-certification, and if implemented, would be in the range of gold to platinum, which is the highest scoring of that standard. Final slide, please. Last, I want to close with a view provided by Steve Prather from Winter Storm Uri, just another look at some of the wonder that's within this greenway. And now we'll open it up to questions. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And I'm sure we do have some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and just go around and as I see you on the grid. So that would start with you, Board Member DiCarlo. I know you had some questions earlier. I'm not sure if they were addressed or not, but please go for it.
Okay, thank you. Love being the first. Okay, well, first of all, thank you all so much for being here and for this presenting the vision plan. I know it's a long-awaited project for all the residents in South Austin and along the creek. I see, a lot of great things in the vision plan, a lot of great elements. I did appreciate all of the the variety of community engagement that was offered, like the videos, the photos, the mapping, the creek cards. I don't think I've ever really seen that level of variety in other vision plans since I've been on the board. So that was cool to see. Yeah, I did have some questions that I had posed, and I'm not sure who exactly answered those, but thank you for answering those questions for me. I guess I would say, after having some of those questions answered, some of my concerns might be the community engagement piece. It's a little concerning that a member of the work group has even expressed concerns about that, and is opposed to the plan. So I guess it'd be helpful to hear maybe a little bit more about the community engagement, and especially considering that this creek plan has been in the works for many years before this past year. And so it'd be helpful to hear about, how some of the previous community engagement was also incorporated into this plan. And then I guess my other concerns are just, the kind of current state of the creek. I have been out there recently. I was able to go out there with board member Mason Murphy, and I mean, those pictures that a lot of the citizens shared are accurate. It looks pretty bad in a lot of the areas. So just, I don't know. So I guess my other concern is just kind of the current state of really the city. I know it's more than just this park; it's the entire city, dealing with the issues of individuals who are experiencing homelessness and how best to address that, especially when trying to implement a new vision plan like this. So if anyone wants to speak to that, that'd be great. And then after y'all address that, I do have a couple of questions from the Southeast Combined Neighborhood Contact Team that they sent me some questions. So I'll share those with y'all in just a minute as well.
Hello. Thank you for your question, and we collectively responded to your question beforehand, so thank you for sending that in. And our community engagement, primarily for this round of community engagement, focused on the immediate surrounding community for this section of Williamson Creek. And there will be opportunities for further community engagement during the technical review process of implementation. So we work alongside the community working group to engage neighbors in their surrounding neighborhoods. And this has been a community-led process since about 2017. Our organization, Community Powered Workshop, at the time, Austin Community Design Development Center, was approached by residents in the Southwood neighborhood to partner with the Nature Conservancy on leading a series of community walks called Explore Williamson Creek. And it was from these conversations that led to the desire to put together a vision plan. And that's how we were invited into the neighborhood to engage residents from that initial series of engagement. And from here, we've continued to engage with other neighborhood associations. And I'll emphasize that there's opportunity for continued community engagement as neighbors start to collaborate and organize around implementing Tier 1 ideas, which, as Claire was talking about, are volunteer-led, more quote-unquote low-hanging fruit ideas that can be led by neighborhoods. So our role in this effort was to build leadership, trust, collaboration between the community and city working groups, so that as we transition out of the process, that they are set up to continue working together, from residents who live in the neighborhood, prioritizing what they want to see, and from the city working group's perspective as land managers, the feasibility of implementing those ideas in a floodplain. So that was the intent of the collaborative working group. And so we hope that people can take it and run with it and continue building on what they've already been talking about and hoping for their neighborhood. And we've been happy to work with our team and support it up to this point.
And just to build on that, Siobhan, I don't know if now is a good time to maybe just talk about some of the numbers on our engagement. I'm happy to pass that back to you, or I can go through those as well.
Yeah, so we engaged about 2,300 people. And what we could do, given the constraints of the pandemic, was we hosted 3 socially distanced pop-ups and had about 30 people show up there. And through our 6 virtual Creek chats where people could call in if they didn't have internet access, we met with residents for direct one-on-one questions there. We hosted 5 virtual events where people could come in, and the community working group led breakout rooms of doing the interactive map that everything's on centralwilliamsoncreek.org. It shows the community map that people could pinpoint existing trailheads, or an idea goes here, and start geographically pinpointing some of those ideas. From there, Asco Robinson designed some of those ideas into those Creek idea cards that Claire referenced earlier, and that was put on an engagement platform, and people casted 2,200 votes either on that platform or at the socially distanced pop-ups with sticky dots. And those were how those ideas were prioritized into the vision plan. And the vision plan went through a few iterations with 700 comments total, and that was made available on the social pinpoint platform that we use, and also printed printed as a hard copy upon request. And so all of that was taken into consideration and updated through a few iterations. And we reviewed some of those updates with neighborhood associations and the community working group to the final plan. And for our platform, we had about 3,000 total door hangers and 4,300 pieces of printed materials in English and Spanish. All of our materials and engagement was made available in English and Spanish, and people could pick up these Creek packs or a little backpack of the printed materials in English and Spanish for them to participate, mail in, or pick up, and whatever we could coordinate with them on that. And the interactive map had about 2,171 total visits. The Creek idea cards had 3,441 total visits, and we had about 1,000 unique users total on the engagement platform. We also had newsletters announcing engagement activities or any updates to the vision plan, and people were forwarding that to their neighbors. We met with council member in offices, District 2, 3, and 5. We spoke to about 6 organizations, including the Other Ones Foundation, GAVA, and the community working group was 8 residents from the Southwood and Heartwood neighborhoods that we engaged with every month on this mostly leadership activities, capacity building on participatory budgeting, land management, public speaking, in a way that they could present the vision plan to their neighbors and be leaders in stewarding this vision plan into implementation in the future. And have more numbers. I can go on. If anybody has more specific questions, happy to answer.
Board Member DeCarlo, did you have another question?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, one other question on the numbers. So just to confirm, the 2,300 people that you're referring to, that number is like the total number of different individuals that participated in any community engagement aspect?
Yes, that's a sum of all the virtual, in-person, socially distanced numbers in total.
Okay. Okay, and then let me bring up, I think y'all should have received a copy of these questions, but it was only few hours ago. So I'm just going to read off these questions that I received from the Southeast Combined Neighborhood Plan contact team after they received the vision plan. Okay, so the first question is, Slide number 6 refers to the 100-year floodplain. They'd like to confirm, is this the old 100-year floodplain or the new 100-year floodplain per the Atlas 14?
I can take that one. So I think a good reference that I would point them to is on page 17. We did try to convey that information in the plan, but the floodplains are an estimated 25-year and 100-year flood events. So in what we say, I'm just going to read directly from it so I get it right. It said, it should be noted that due to a new precipitation study from the National Weather Service, known as Atlas 14, the floodplain maps of the entire city will be remapped within the next 3 to 5 years. The floodplains are shown in this document to reflect an estimation of this future update. It reflects the upcoming changes by showing estimated 25-year and 100-year flood events according to the City of Austin's Flood Pro fully developed floodplain scenario that can be found at austintexas.gov/floodpro.
Okay, thank you.
Does that mean the answer is the old floodplains, not the new, not the Atlas 14 floodplains? I'm just trying to break it down and answer.
Absolutely. Yeah. So to say it in another way, these are estimated. Sometimes when the flood boundaries officially redrawn, there's a change in extent, but these are an estimated increase. So they're the larger size than the previous floodplain. And that's based on estimations that we worked with City of Austin to represent. So the new boundary for this area has not been mapped, but there's an estimate of what it's going to be, and that's what's represented in the plan.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, the second question is, says slide number 7 references green infrastructure, urban agriculture, community gardens, community built art, low impact trail construction, and signage. What measures and precaution were taken into consideration as part of this plan to ensure no construction along this portion of Williamson Creek would have any adverse impact downstream to Williamson Creek and Onion Creek, specifically to the residents and homes downstream? Also have concerns regarding what can be washed downstream that can compromise public safety and or have a negative environmental impact on the creek.
Stormwater quality was very important to all involved in the plan. So one of the things that we did throughout that question does touch on is the green infrastructure that was prioritized to help slow and reduce the amount of water entering the creek. We also feel that the planting and restoration included in the plan will additionally help with some of the flood, but there's a lot even upstream of that I know is also being studied in a separate group. We did vet every element with particularly watershed protection department, but we do include that this is a concept, so the final way that is implemented would have to be reviewed prior to implementation, especially on the tier. That's part of the review of and split in some of the tier 2 elements is that necessary review by those departments and property owners to ensure safety.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I know the district that I live in, District 2, has like the neighborhoods along Williamson Creek in South Austin has a really great flood risk, and so it's important to those residents to ensure that this area along Williamson Creek, which goes into Onion Creek, which floods a lot, is properly managed. And then they've got one more question, which is, they said on slide number 10, there's a noted reference to Bergstrom Spur and appears to provide an opportunity for additional connectivity between east and west? Question mark?
We did have the opportunity to meet with the Bergstrom Spur team. And so the alignment we showed was they had a plan, which I believe may be also represented in the urban trails plan to connect to the Williamson Creek Greenway. So that's what we've reflected to help support across projects.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I'm still kind of processing, but I'll let someone else go for now and ask questions.
Thank you, Board Member DeCarlo. So I'm going to go ahead and go through. This is a topic that everybody has a lot of things to say and good questions, but we do, if you can just try to make an effort not to repeat the same things, because we have a lot to cover tonight. So I hate to cut anybody off, but I just want to give you that heads up. Okay, and that's not saying anything about you, Board Member DeCarlo. I was just looking at the clock. Okay, Board Member Faust, if you want to go ahead, please, if you have any questions.
My first question is greenway a defined term? How is a greenway different than a green belt?
I can speak to that. And I just want to note that our engagement numbers are closer to 4,300. I just received a text from one of the community working group members that she'd reached out to more, and people were adding numbers in the background. So I'm happy to share those numbers with you after, if that helps. But regarding your question on the greenway versus greenbelt, I believe this decision was made early on to align with how the language is used across the city to describe other similar types of space. My understanding that the greenbelt is a pretty specific term that didn't completely reflect what the community wanted to see here from the engagement, and that was done in 2019. But if others have anything to add to that, please feel free.
What's another greenway that this would align with? You're saying greenway was used in other places, and this was chosen to align with those other greenways. Do you know what those are?
I might call on Nicole if she knows more specifics to that question.
Hey everyone, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I'm remembering back to a conversation that was had over a year ago, so my brain is a little fuzzy, but I believe in another example of this, maybe, is it Little Walnut Creek, perhaps? I don't know specifics. I just know when we had the initial conversations about this being called a vision plan versus a master plan, the area being called a greenway versus greenbelt, that we settled on this terminology for a specific reason in alignment with the language that the city uses to describe different types of spaces that they manage.
Okay, Little Walnut Creek Greenway. Does anybody from PARD know the answer to this? So I think Little Walnut Creek is a green belt.
Yes. So just real quickly, in our park system, many of the creeks that traverse through our parks are referred to as green belts. Terminology has shifted back and forth. We have noticed that people are starting to use greenway as well, but many of our parks are listed as green belts with the name attached to that. So we have seen kind of terminology change and shift a little bit recently.
Okay, so is there an example of another greenway or not? That was the question.
In terms of a plan that's similar to this, that would be just the terminology.
Just a greenway, yeah.
Bull Creek.
Bull Creek is a greenway?
I was also wondering and thinking about Walnut Creek downtown, Waterloo down to the mouth is another one.
They call it the Waterloo Greenway.
Yes, okay. And then I can't think of any other ones other than ones that were mentioned.
Well, I mean, I think to me nomenclature is important, and it's not it's not a term that I'm familiar with, greenway, and in the sense of sort of a natural area, but it's just not something that I've seen used in these kind of trail environments. Because greenway to me is somewhere along the lines of a highway. And I was just wondering if there was a specific reason that name was chosen.
Board member Faust, and board chair, if you mind me interjecting real quick or providing some information. So the last two long-range plans, the one that we currently are operating under and the previous one, both refer to much of our greenbelt system actually as greenways. And then right now NRPA, which is National Recreation Parks Association, pretty much defines everything as a greenway. So the way I've always looked at it, board member, is that the green belt, and I don't think this is necessarily true, but it's how I have visioned it. The green belt is that belt, that conglomeration of that natural environment that protected that, or that green space, whereas the greenway offers some sort of infrastructure onto it, and whether it's linear in path or something a little different, and that's different than say like the blueway / waterway. I know blueway was a term that was also used in the past relating to the waterways. That was in the earlier long range plan. So it is. I agree with you, and I think right now it'd be worth looking at the long range plan as far as all the definitions that we use and have adopted and pulled forward to other master plans and in code.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. It seemed like it was really heavily branded under the vision, the greenway, and I was wondering if that was something that was chosen in the beginning as part of the community engagement process, or how that came about. I guess so. One question I had, I looked through the vision plan, and there's a lot of interesting features, and it sounds like there's support for a lot of those features. There's also some comments about what I heard was more of a natural trail environment being what some people wanted. I feel like sometimes in these community engagement processes, especially when you're dealing with a natural area, it feels like in order to show that engagement was taken and people did things and they voted and that we have a plan, you sort of have to put things in there. And I was just wondering, as far as if somebody was trying to participate in this process and what they really wanted was just some trail areas with things left pretty natural, how would that have been represented in terms of the creek cards and the idea cards and the voting? Like, how does sort of a very natural environment get evaluated and voted for in the process that was undertaken?
I guess I would answer that in a couple of ways. The first is that I will say we did a lot of advocacy to scale back, because that is definitely something we heard from the community, is that they wanted a wilderness experience. And I think in some ways our plan does look like there's a lot there, but it's actually a very, very light touch. A lot of what's shown is the white trails are mulch nature trails. The mountain bike is a single track mountain bike. And then there's just a lot of restoration and invasive species removal. And we had some really good conversations with the Urban Trails program, because what was planned for this section of the Greenway was actually much bigger. And so they agreed to do more community engagement in the future, because they had planned to do a concrete trail that would be 12 foot wide. And so we tried to bridge those and reflect the community guidance for the nature trail in this section the greenway, which is also supported by the neighborhood plans also asked for those passive trails and open areas. So, and then we also reflected that desire and trying to group amenities into areas. And so you'll see in between, there are just kind of long sections of trail that are within the greenway and leaving it be.
Okay, so was there a creek card that you could vote for that just said natural area? I mean, was the question, was how did I participate if that's what I wanted? What did I do?
There are a couple ways. So some other ways were in conversation in the online engagement events. Lots of people expressed it that way, where we were able to actually talk through what the expectation was. Some of it was the visualization. And then also we also had a lot of down votes of things people didn't want to see that in the back, you can see there were 45 Creek idea cards, and many of those were not included in the plan because we did hear that from the community that they didn't want to see that. So I hope that better answers your question. I'm trying to be direct.
Well, it sounds like you understand kind of the phenomenon I'm talking about when you're doing these processes where it can sort of lead to a desire to fill it in with things, but trying to make sure that if there was a desire to not do that, it was respected and there was a way to have that voice in the process. Miss Patella, her question was like specifically the number of people. I think what she was trying to say is not the number of people that went on the website or like if one person voted a bunch of times, but just how many people, like individuals engaged. And I'm still not sure I totally know what the answer is.
So the total is closer to 4,300, and that's about 2,200 people voting on the ideas, or 2,200 votes, 651 unique users on the mapping projects, 999 unique users on the Creek idea cards, 50 people total at the virtual pop-ups and Creek chats, 140 virtual picnic participants total.
Okay, slow down. 50 people came in person to an event.
Around 30 people, 20 to the virtual Creek chats, 30 to the socially distanced pop-ups. We were hesitant to advertise it widely, and we had a sign up to try to mitigate the numbers.
I understand. It was COVID. I understand. I can't believe anybody came in person. I'm just trying to understand the actual numbers. So I get that why it was limited, of course. But so you're saying 50 people came to an online event or an in-person event?
There was a variety of events. The virtual, bigger, we call them community picnics. That was about 140 people. We had around 30 people at the pop-ups or the meetups around the creek, socially distanced, and about 20 people either calling in or Zooming in to more direct Creek chats that we had every week. We had either a pop-up or a Creek chat that people could follow up on questions that was more, direct than having a virtual community picnic.
Okay,
and that's
so
in addition to the unique users. So just to explain the unique users piece, 651 unique users on our mapping feedback opportunity means that we're able to tell that that's not the same person saying the same thing, or we're saying different things over and over again. And 999 unique users who have responded to feedback on the Creek idea cards. And that's in addition to comments we got from folks on the actual draft of the plan. So we fielded 700 comments. And maybe Siobhan knows, but I don't know how many unique users. I don't know how many people that were those 700 comments, but that included both virtual comments as well as printed PDFs that people wrote comments on and sent back to us.
Well, I mean, I guess just to the other, thanks for that information. To the other Parks Board members, I think my thought is it's hard for me to say if that's, you know, a robust stakeholder input. I'm sure that they did their best. My understanding is the whole process, the whole thing took place during COVID. And I mean, my feeling is that while we're still in that, I wouldn't be opposed to trying to have some other kind of event now that more people are vaccinated and feel safer if they wanted to come try to look at a map in person. Everything being online, my sense of it is, without knowing, is that does exclude some group of people, but I just don't know enough about it. But it does feel like if all of the issues that we're hearing are really related to the outreach, then, you know, that might be something that we could take another shot at. But I want to move it on and let other people ask questions. Thank you for your answers.
Chair Lewis, do you mind if I just respond just one last point on Board Member Faust's comment?
Sure, go ahead.
Just if we're citing that 31,000 people number that Ms. Pitala said at the beginning, and if we reach 4,300 people, that's 14% of what she's calling the neighborhood population. We've been a part of a plan down in Galveston that tried to reach the entire island, and we reached 15% engagement, and that won an award last year for the American Planning Association Texas chapter for engagement.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving on to Board Member Taylor. Do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Cotton-Seibel?
I guess my question is sort of the elephant itself, and that is, I'm wondering what's so upsetting. It sounds like that there was something that was the engagement they didn't feel was wide enough or whatever, but I know from what they're saying and in seeing previous projects, I know that that does sound like the appropriate amount of outreach. So I'm wondering what people are upset about with this plan.
I can answer that when it's my turn, Laura. This is Board Member Mason Murphy. Do you want me to answer that now?
Why don't we go ahead and just go through and
I'll come back to it.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions, Board Member Cotton-Seibel? If nobody else who was on the project wants to address that, then do you have any other questions? I'm sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, no, that's my question.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Board Member Bernard, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. I see that there are several properties that did not participate in the floodplain buyouts. And I'm just wondering how you are engaging with these properties and working with them.
They are not.
We, from these numbers, people that are part of that participatory buyout program or voluntary buyout program, or have decided to stay in the neighborhood, that is a combination of those neighbors. And we have engaged directly with people that we printed PDFs for them, and they provided numerous comments that were taken into consideration with the vision plan. So there was a variety of people that we engaged, whether they were part of that buyout program or not.
Okay, and if they don't participate in the buyout program, how is that going to impact the vision plan in terms of just easements and whatnot?
That was a bit of a secondary reason for the high water route was to try to maintain connectivity. But I think that'll also be a really important part of the road to implementation is continued community engagement and continued feedback, especially for those adjacencies, and maintaining the community dialogue that was really important, and understanding how people directly related feel as things get more finite and included in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Board Member De Palma or Vice Chair De Palma?
Board Chair, I would prefer to hear one of my other colleagues, Board Member Mason Murphy, and then be able to ask any additional questions that come out of that conversation. Thank you.
Certainly. Okay, so I think that is, I'm sorry, I think I covered it.
Sorry.
I would like to speak. I haven't had a chance to yet.
Yes,
I haven't either.
I was just going to say, oh, I'm sorry, Board Member Rinaldi, you're right. No, I was going to let you go last, Board Member Mason Murphy. Go ahead, Board Member Rinaldi.
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. This is a very, very cool plan, and I love all the diversity of ideas that it brought forward and the diversity of perspectives that it's integrating from the community. This creek has obviously been top of mind for the community and the neighborhood for a very long time. My questions are about, let's see, accessibility is a big one. I'm wondering if the team can talk a little bit more about how this plan is incorporating accommodations for people of all ability levels to have natural experiences in the outdoor places along this greenway. I know that we've been hearing a lot about natural trail surfacing, moving away maybe from the harder surface trails. And what concerns me a little bit about that is that, I know that we also need accessibility for people in our community who don't have as high mobility and ability levels. And so I'd like to hear a little more about how we're making space for all those members of our community in this plan.
Absolutely, I can speak to that because that inclusivity was very important. There's a couple of pieces that were included in the plan. So I spoke to the natural surface trails. A second idea we included that I think will need to be, would be a tier 2 inclusion were our bonded hardwood mulch trails, which are 100% permeable, but provide ADA compliant access. So I think that would provide the wilderness experience that we heard from the community, as well as an accessible trail that would be able to be used for all types of ability. So that's one component that we implemented. A second example is a compromise between the feedback that we heard from the community and the need for accessibility, which is the inclusion of 3 on-street accessible parking spaces at the South First Street trailhead. There aren't close neighbors to that. It's a little bit more separated from adjacent residents, and we felt it was important to both have an accessible drop-off area as well as accessible spaces for that piece. And then the third is that we included recommendations for seating elements. They, at the trailheads, we heard a strong preference for not having benches within the greenway. That wouldn't seem natural, have a more urban appearance. So we limited those to trailheads, but within the greenway, we made recommendations for having rest stops that would help people with limited mobility feel that they can at least pause and lean and rest every so often and be able to continue without that concern. Those are a few of the mechanisms we used.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you know if there'd also be the ability to include those kinds of ADA accessible ramps maybe, or those entrances into the greenway aside from where there are the parking spaces?
Yes, I do think that would be really beneficial to have improved curb ramps at intersections. We do have some places where we also recommend raised crossings for traffic calming across streets and things of that nature that would improve accessibility and safety for everyone around the creek.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Yeah, I think that I would encourage us to, I think as a board and as a community to really not see accessibility and hard surface trails being in conflict with a natural environment and natural experiences, because it's really important for people of all abilities to have to be able to access these experiences. And I don't love that those ideas get, I guess, pitted against each other in some way. I think there might be a perception that if you have like a wider, harder surface trail, that it makes, you're taking away from the natural beauty. And I want to encourage us to take maybe a different perspective on that with regards to accessibility. I'm also wondering about bathrooms in the Greenway. So I think somebody mentioned it in emails to us that there was conversation about whether or not there should be bathrooms. Where did y'all come down on that?
So we heard from the community that the bathrooms got, when we presented them in the idea cards, and they were strongly voted against. So that's what we heard from the community. The second thing that I think is important to know about the Greenway in general is that there's only one section out of the floodplain where they could be located. So I do think, as that, and that's the South First trailhead that I mentioned with the accessible spots. So as the vision plans represented right now, they're not included to reflect the feedback we heard from the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think that's it. I just wanted to add, my comments about the public engagement on this project. I think that I appreciate your team adding some context about the numbers and the types of engagement that we've heard. From that also reflects my familiarity with, the kinds of numbers that we can see with these sorts of projects. I think that, at a certain point, once you've reached and engaged a representative sample of a community, you can reach a point of diminishing returns where, even if you continue trying to reach out and reach more and more people, you're not necessarily going to receive a different cross-section of ideas or diversity of perspectives that you didn't gain before. And it really, I think what's so cool about this plan is the way that it puts a lot of the implementation into the hands of the community. And so by letting the community and the users of this Greenway kind of run with that process, we might be able to see which things are getting, put into action sooner rather than later, which is also a form of community engagement, in my opinion, when you see what people are kind of taking into their own hands and doing. So I think that, to me, the community engagement seems very robust, and it doesn't seem like something that ends with the completion of this plan. The community will continue to be engaged in other ways throughout the implementation. So I'm very encouraged by that. So that's all I've got for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Rinaldi. Okay, Board Member Mason Murphy, I was having you go last because I know you've been invested in this project for a long time, and I know you have an opinion. So I wanted you to, if you wanted to address any of the issues that have been brought up, or just let us know your thoughts.
I will. Okay, great. Great. I'm going to start with some questions. First of all, so I really do want to thank you for the time you spent on creating this professional looking presentation. I can tell it took a lot of time. I do have a few questions for Nicole at Community Powered Workshop. So were you aware, or when did you become aware of the major displacement planned for 250 low-family homes and existing SF3 affordable housing stock in this neighborhood that would be triggered with the approval of this plan, including several Williamson Creek Working Group members' homes? This
Thank
addresses
you for that
the,
question.
were you aware or when did you become aware that a greenway versus a green belt, the built environment, and the changes of adopting the Atlas 14 floodplain right now puts our entire neighborhood and 250 additional homes in the 25-year floodplain because of infill development upstream? So and these are already affordable housing stock, which is affordable housing's problem. These are already families in the center of the city they're shrinking. And so I was just wondering, were we just the, casualty of progress?
I'm
Nicole, do you
aware of no such plans. Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, great. I'm not aware of any plans to displace residents. I'm not sure if there is a separation in your question between the Atlas 14 adoption, which is not part of this vision planning process, and the actual vision plan document itself. The vision plan document itself does not have any statements or goals as to the displacement of residences in the neighborhood. We've actually had a lot of conversations. Excuse me, ma'am. We've had a lot of conversations from the very beginning of this process about concerns about green gentrification and the unintended consequences of neighborhood improvements that have happened in other places in Austin and that we've seen across the country, and have been very intentional about involving departments from across the city to have conversations about how anti-displacement strategies may be applicable here as well.
They are definitely applicable. They just haven't been used. We're the tail of the Eastern Crescent, and I have, that documentation from GAVA. I didn't realize you all were still working with GAVA, as Siobhan said. I'm curious as to that relationship at this moment as well.
Is that a question?
It is. Like, what is your relationship with GAVA at this point? Because I didn't realize you all were working with GAVA at this point.
Well, GAVA is not a partner on this specific project, so I'm not sure that our relationship with that organization is relevant in this conversation.
You brought it up. I'm sorry. Okay. So then my second question is, what was the scope of the St. David's grant and who was it awarded to?
The St. David's grant was awarded to the Nature Conservancy. It was to support the hiring of a landscape architect to create the vision plan and work alongside Community Powered Workshop and the Nature Conservancy, and to pay stipends for community members to participate in the community working group so that we were appropriately valuing their time alongside the work that everybody else was doing in the process.
And so what was the level of involvement with Amy Belair, the scientist, and the Nature Conservancy, who were to be the liaisons with the city?
I believe you're aware of
I know, but no one else is.
Yeah.
But no one else is. Thank you.
Yeah. So the Nature Conservancy was an early partner in this process. They began this relationship at the same time that we did with you and the rest of the neighborhood. We have worked with the Nature Conservancy to receive multiple grants to support engagement and this work. The Nature Conservancy's original role was to help to do field assessments and mapping of the area, and to act as a liaison between the team and the city working group, including the highlighting the environmental aspects that are important to the missions of various departments, including Watershed and Parks Department and the Office of Sustainability, and in helping to communicate the contribution that this model that's being set up with this project may be able to make towards urban resilience and climate change efforts across the state as a statewide, national, and global organization. Due to the pandemic and budget cuts to the Nature Conservancy's Texas chapter, our local partners position and the program under which we were collaborating were eliminated in the summer of 2020, and we worked with the Nature Conservancy to transfer the remaining responsibilities of their staff and the funding to community powered workshops so that the collective work could continue. By this time, the field assessments and mapping had been completed and the city working group had been established. And so the Nature Conservancy team worked to transfer responsibilities of managing that city working group over to community powered workshop and transfer those remaining funds.
Got it. So when we spoke with Amy Belair a couple weeks ago, she indicated she left in March, and I know that this process hadn't actually really even begun yet. Was there any consideration, since you lost the person who was awarded the grant and the person with the skill set to actually implement the grant in the vision of the community, was there ever a consideration with COVID to just table it for a bit, since everything sort of fell apart before it started?
Well, Amy's departure was over an extended period of time, and she is continuing to work for the Nature Conservancy under a different role. And so we have had the luck to be able to continue to do what we needed to do to transfer those responsibilities. I will say that all of the work that has been done to receive funding for this project has been a collaborative effort. I would not say that it's fair to characterize the Nature Conservancy as the only one with the ability to lead and implement this kind of planning process.
Okay.
The St. David's Foundation,
You answered it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you. So Siobhan, I have a couple questions for you too. So taken from the master plan, page 6 and 7, the project overview, the stated goal of this project was to build long-term collaborative working relationships between community members and public land managers. These working groups place community members and city staff on equal footing in the planning process. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you say you did in achieving this goal with our community and the Watershed Protection Department?
I'm not really sure how to answer that.
Are we on equal footing? Are we on equal footing? On a scale of 1 to 10.
The effort of the collaborative working group was to reach or implement a model that could better collaborate the city land managers and the community members to meet on these conversations about what to envision in the Greenway. And I think we were successful in that effort as much as we could be. We were able to.
But were we on equal footing? Is the community on any kind of equal footing with the city?
I think
a lot of resident power.
Let me just,
Siobhan, may I jump in?
You may. I'll move on.
Councilman.
Well, no. Hold on 1 second. Board Member Mason Murphy, could you, as far as the community outreach, I know that Board Member Cotton Seibel had a question, and since you're on that, would you mind answering that question? Thank you.
Yes. So, and so did Nancy as well. So the patchwork of homes that were left were not engaged with at all. In fact, their voices were actively silenced, and there have been immense barriers to participation with community powered workshop and the partners on this plan. Watershed Protection Department is complicit, PART is complicit. And this plan, I have tried and tried to edit it, and it is uneditable. It is fundamentally, systematically flawed. There was no meaningful community engagement. What came out was a virtual reality based in a virtual time, and it looks really good, but it is not at all what our community wanted. Our community wanted a natural surface trail that resembled Blund Creek. Our community has been asking since 2015 of PARD staff for help removing invasives in our creek. The only help we ever asked for was invasives in our creek. And you saw from Larry Murphy's pictures and Malcolm's pictures, that's what our creeks look like now. If we had removed the ligustrums, we wouldn't have campers. We wouldn't have the degradation. And so I'm not heartless, but when you have a community where 58 homes have already been destroyed, 58 families removed from their homes, and they're looking at 250 more from Union Pacific to Congress, the Union Pacific Rail to Congress, that's my whole neighborhood. When you look at the pictures, that's the 25-year floodplain. And whenever there is a built environment like a greenway, things get triggered. That is considered a transportation corridor. We already know Mayor Adler's an eminent domain attorney. I don't want to give the city one chance to disrupt the quality of life that this community has. This is a unique, wonderful, wild, and very, it's a wilderness corridor. And we don't want it paved. And we don't want our neighbors to be kicked out. And we want to be heard. And we've been doing community engagement in this community since 2006 and writing grants ourselves, doing everything. And me specifically, I made the mistake of bringing in community powered workshop. It's bringing the wolves into the chicken house. I'm sorry. We want no part of it. We want no part of that gentrification that's coming, and we're not going to pave the way. You can pick another creek. Our creek is degraded. We have TCEQ violations all over the place. Nobody wants to clean it up. We have stolen vehicles, catalytic converters, drugs, prostitutes turning tricks, where my kids used to play with no supervision in the creek.
Okay.
So that is the problem. That is the elephant in the room.
Okay. And I totally understand your passion about this. I know how long you've worked on this. I'd like to give them just an opportunity on this. And then we really are going to have to.
We're going to have to move.
Yes, but go ahead. If somebody would like to address their concerns, please feel free to do so. Or not?
I'd like to speak. Yeah, I would like to speak to the engagement aspect. And I'll let the team at Oscar Robinson address the aspects of the natural trail and as to the technical aspects of the plan. But I'd just like to reiterate the information shared previously by the rest of the team about the extensive engagement and creative engagement that has been done throughout this process. And very challenging times, we have achieved a substantial amount of collaboration with the community members. We've continued to meet requests for engagement, including after the presentation to the Environmental Commission. We continued to meet with neighborhood groups, continued to work with individual residents to receive comments on the plan and to address those comments in the plan up until the, hot off the presses came to y'all. We also recognize that it's very unlikely that an engagement process will reach every single individual in a neighborhood. And that's just kind of the system as it is. We do know that as this process moves forward, and whether the or there will continue to be work by the community in this area, and there will be engagement continuing in adopting the plan, adjusting the plan, implementing the things in the plan. There will continue to be community voices as part of that process and community leadership in that process, which is exactly as it should be. and we're in full support of that. So before my child interrupts too much more, I can hand it over to Oscar Robinson if y'all want to address any of the conversations about the elements of the.
So board members,
Nicole,
it's Kimberly McNeely speaking. Are you able to hear me? Because I tried.
Yes, we can hear you.
So it's now 7:15. I want to remind you of the posting language on this particular item, and the posting language for this particular item is a discussion about the plan itself. It's not about land management. It's not about the land management of the land. It's not about gentrification or the relationship between watershed protection or the Parks and Recreation Department. And I respectfully ask that at this particular point in time, you consider a final comment and then the opportunity to please move forward, either voting this, taking action on this if you so choose, or deciding to not take action on it and allowing us to move forward. It's a little disappointing to have some of this conversation feel like a huge attack. And I just want to let you know that my team, the watershed protection team, and the team that was part of this process does not deserve to be attacked in public. It's just, you're allowed to have your opinion. You're certainly allowed to express your concerns about this particular plan, but being attacked is not acceptable. And I just need you to know that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Director McNeely. I think I do want to, we need to wrap this up. So I am going to.
I'll wrap it up.
Well, I wanted to also give Board Member De Palma a minute, since he didn't get to speak earlier, if he wanted to say something. So I'll let him, if you don't mind, just go ahead, Board Member De Palma.
Yeah, no, I appreciate everybody's comments and inputs and understands a lot of the concerns. My original concern was engagement, what that looked like. Very familiar with the engagement process, having done a lot of engagement over the years, and probably the most substantive being the 2017 facilities and bond, the bond for the 2017 AIC bond. And I remember the frustration of a community member saying, you didn't knock on every door. And I'm not saying that's what's being requested here, but I mean, I do understand a lot of that frustration, and you try to reach everybody out through different mechanisms. The number, I'd actually expected the unique contacts to be much smaller. And so I don't have a problem with the specific contacts. I do want to also correct something really quick. When I talked about the Greenbelt Greenway, Greenway was the language used up in the previous long range plan. Greenbelt was the language that we have used as a department in the current master plan. So wanted to put that out there. I appreciate board member Rinaldi for highlighting the need for inclusive spaces. That is a hardscape. We need to make sure that everything is everybody's included. When I look at the Atlas 14 flood map on Flood Pro, I see an extension to it, but it's, I see it mostly on Weston Road, which doesn't look like it has any current homes. And then there's, I think on Greens Highway in St. George's Green, there's definitely homes over there as well. I don't know how that gets changed, because that is like how the city adopts the Atlas 14 model. So I don't know how that plays into it. I don't know anything regarding Union Pacific conversation. It's the first I've ever heard of it anywhere. And so with all that, I feel, I'm not going to say I feel comfortable moving forward, because there's so much more I'd like to resolve and to get a better understanding about. But when I look at the degree of outreach during a pandemic, it is substantive. Would I support it? An additional meeting? Absolutely, if budget allowed. I don't know if we have that sort of budget for an amendment to a contract. So that's really it. That's all the comments. I would say it's beautiful. It's a beautiful looking project. I do have one question, and that is just to validate or to get confirmation that this is a segment along Williamson Creek, which desperately needs to be cleaned up, as board member Mason Murphy has talked about. I mean, this is a substantive issue across our city. I see the exact same, maybe not even to that degree, but over in the Oak Hill Y. But this is a segment of Williamson Creek, And am I correct that as this gets done, we will see other segments added to bring that connectivity, particularly out to my community in Oak Hill Y? And that's for the consultant or staff.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Member, Vice Chair DePalma. So, and I know Board Member Mason Murphy that this, as I said earlier, I know you've worked on this for a long time and are very passionate about it and feel really strongly and that the things that y'all have done as a community may not have been recognized, and that I know that's very frustrating. And
well, real quick, can I get an answer to my question though?
Yes. What was your question?
The question was out there. So the question was that this is a segment to Williamson Creek, and it would ultimately connect to a future segment of Williamson Creek. That it's not just stopping here, because I agree with Board Member Mason Murphy. I know the vision that I can't say everybody, but many of my friends have in Southwest Austin is that connectivity of Williamson Creek from Oak Hill Y going all the way, beyond.
I could try to answer your question. Oh, sorry.
I'll try to answer a little bit, and then Greg, if you want to fill in where I missed. So the original intention of this process from the start was to see how we might be able to create a different model for how community members engage in decisions about public land. And so, yes, this plan is specifically about this section of Central Williamson Creek, but hope to set out a model, continued collaboration upstream and downstream for that full connectivity. I'll also clarify that this work has not been done under a contract with the city at all. There's only philanthropic dollars in this at this point. All of the grant funding that has been supporting this work has been received by the Nature Conservancy and Community Powered Workshop. And I'll also share that Board Member Mason Murphy was a paid contractor on previous pieces of this work that has led into the vision plan today.
I'll just add, Board Member, real quickly to your comment about kind of really expanding the trail system. As you know, I know you were heavily involved in our long-range plan, most recent, and our goal in our long-range plan is to expand trails through our creeks and the green belts, to expand those trail systems to connect to a much larger parts of our districts and metros. So actively, our department goes and either through our vision planning practices of going back through a process like this, or whether it's through our parkland dedication ordinance, we make every effort to expand those trail connections, because we know they're very important for neighborhoods to connect to green space. And that was laid out in the long range plan, which was approved by council.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Okay, we need to wrap this up. I do want to say that I'm not going to ask any questions because we have no time, but has the potential to be a beautiful property, and I really am very vested in trying to ensure that we provide those beautiful trails, access, nature to all of our community across Austin. And this is one place that I think really we need to do that. So I think it really does need to happen. And I do appreciate everybody's effort to make sure that does happen, because it's long overdue and the work needs to be done. But it seems like community outreach is a challenge. I know there's always that debate, where is it community outreach but not community engagement? But this is one of the few times before the Parks Board that we've really heard communities feel really strongly that they were not actually listened to, which is concerning. And obviously it was concerning for Environmental Commission because they did ask for more community outreach as well. So having said that, you've certainly given us a long list of things that you did that were impressive in community outreach. The the cards, reaching out as much as you could. I know it's challenging. I've done that in different capacities in my work, but I do think it didn't work as well as it has before. I guess is the best way to put it. So here we are. We've got to move on. Do we? And I'm not sure whether we're ready
I do.
or not, but we do need to move on.
Okay, this is Board Member Mason Murphy. I beg to differ on most of the data that they just supplied that is inaccurate data. Our neighborhood represents District 2, 3, and 5, and we come together in the middle of our neighborhood, and overwhelmingly, our community is opposed to this plan. I move that we do not move forward with this plan.
Okay.
Lewis, since you haven't closed the public hearing, do you mind if I respond just really quickly?
Yes, quickly. We have got. I'm about to just stop. So go ahead.
So I'm so sorry. I just feel like I really need to say this because I'm obviously not representing anyone except Asakura Robinson tonight, but I know the position you're in where you're hearing really divisive comments from folks, and you're hearing one side of the story that sounds very different from what we're saying. And so I feel for you because I've been in that position in the past. I want to say that I do feel like a lot of those comments are disingenuous. We have received comments directly from Kate Mason Murphy, who I was surprised didn't recuse tonight since she has been paid to work on this project in the past. And those comments were responded to in time with direct. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We responded to every single one of those comments that was directly relevant to the vision plan. And what I fear is actually happening here, and it breaks my heart because this team has worked so hard on this plan, is that a disagreement between watershed protection and the Mason Murphys that has escalated to violence has actually created a toxic environment for this plan, which, to be honest, it was my call to cancel that public meeting that we were scheduled for because a third of the people registered for it were the Mason Murphys and their family, and that was a couple of weeks after a violent threat was made to watershed protection staff. And so I cannot go on, with how proud I am of our team and the work that they're doing, feeling okay not saying that I feel like this has become toxic because of a very separate issue that we're not posted to talk about tonight.
Okay, I think that we're not going to be
disagree.
Let me just say this. I don't think the Parks Board is at this point ready to do anything on this, given all we've heard. And I think you need to have some kind of meeting with community and then come back to us. I'm just not willing to.
So board member chair, there's a motion on the table which has not been seconded.
Yes. Okay.
So is there a second for board member Mason Murphy's motion to not recommend the plan? Okay, there's no motion. I don't see anybody.
I'm not ready. Yeah, as I said, I think this is that we have a lot of passions that are really high, and I really think that some kind of, whether it's mediation or whatever needs to happen.
I understand that, but you have to give the board the opportunity to at least make a motion if they want to.
Okay.
Somebody can make a motion to not move forward. They can make a motion to approve, but we need to give the board that opportunity to make a motion.
I would like to make a motion. Could I make a motion that we table this discussion until? Hello?
I'm sorry.
I would like to make a motion that we table this until and have further discussion at another time.
Second that.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so we have everybody except for board member Faust opposed? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm voting in favor of tabling. I'm not opposed.
Okay. Right. We're not board member Rinaldi, board member Faust. It was what I wasn't sure about you. Are you
Sure.
Okay. I think we voted unanimously to table it. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time coming out here, and hopefully we will can do this in a more productive manner next time. Thank you. We need to move on.
So board members, if I could just let you know the important issues that we have on the agenda, if we might consider taking them in a different order so that you have ample time to discuss, and the things that perhaps don't need to move forward do not have to become priority. But number 3 is something that will be going to the Planning Commission and absolutely needs your vote. Number 7 is your own board and committee nominations, and I think that if I could respectfully suggest that you would want to get through that. 4 and 5 are things that we would hope that you would consider, but if you're not able to consider them, we could move forward to council without an action from the board. It's something that is not desirable, but it's certainly something that we can do. We could remove number 6 and we can postpone number 2. So I offer that respectfully for your consideration, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. We'll see. It is 7:30. We'll see what we can power through.